that will be using that Roush Yates engines and to power their cars, and those will be people that we have to continue to watch at tracks like this. And Chevrolet for their effort is going to be strong for themselves. So we've seen Austin Dillon went out there in the last couple of years for Richard Childress Racing, who's been a powerhouse organization. And I think today will be a good key to see who's on top of their game and who's not, and get us into the Busch Clash for tomorrow and pole and outside pole qualifying for the Daytona 500.
Well, we certainly do have the Clash tomorrow. We'll get into that here in just a second. But let's kind of talk a little bit about the Busch brothers. They're always a storyline for us to look at in NASCAR. When we look at Kurt and Kyle separately, two separate racers, brothers, but both very, very competitive racers in the NASCAR circuit.
Yeah, I mean, they're super competitive, both of them themselves. And, you take what Kurt Busch came over to Chip Ganassi Racing last year, and I think tried to start turning that organization around like he's done in the past. And we've seen him do that at various organizations that he's been at in the last couple of years. Is he comes in there and he's able to take a look at what's going on and use his veteran status over there to maybe rework some things over there and get them on a better performance level. And I think that the turnaround over at Chip Ganassi Racing, which is competitive over in the IndyCar side, has not been as competitive on the NASCAR side. And with Kurt Busch in the house, it'll give him the opportunity, or at Chip Ganassi Racing, the opportunity to build upon some of those things that they want to and get back into victory lane and start winning races again, start being more competitive out there. And I think Carl Larson himself over there as a teammate is, he's a competitive person, but I think as an organization they have to be able to figure out what they've been doing wrong to get back to that status and give both Kurt and Kyle opportunities to go to victory lane and win races. So, but, for his brother, we saw what he did last year in winning the championship, and, both of the two of them continue to be competitive with one another, and this will just continue on. Kurt Busch, I'm sure, is getting into the winning years of his career, so we may not see the Busch brothers out there together for too much longer, but we have them now, and we'll continue to see them compete and do what they do out there.
Let's talk just for a moment about Kyle. Kyle Busch, I mean, he's never won a Daytona 500, and you think about his magnificence or everybody knows Kyle Busch because he wins his races. I mean, he won a Summer Cup race there at Daytona, and 3 qualifying races, the Busch Clash and the Summer Xfinity race. He's did some stuff at Daytona, but he's never won the Daytona 500 itself. Why is that? Or is that going to change this year? What are your thoughts on
that? He's been, he's not been that great at super speedways, and I think there's a lot of drivers out there that just don't perform well at super speedways. You think back a couple of years ago where he wrecked and broke his leg and ended up winning his first championship there. But I think I kind of equate it again to like somebody else like Jimmy Johnson and try and throw him into the conversation. Is he's not been traditionally good at these super speedways. There seems to always be something that happens, and I've heard for years that you look back over the careers of some of these drivers, and there's just people that just have a natural talent to go out there and race these super speedways, and Dale Earnhardt and Dale Jr. Come to mind into that. I think that between them and Junior Johnson that discovered the draft at these super speedways, there's Brad Keselowski and others that just have this natural talent, and that's not to take away from their driving abilities for Kyle or Jimmy or some of the other drivers, but they just there just seems to be this natural talent for some of these drivers to go out there to super speedway racing and excel at it. And it's like people that are good on short tracks, people that are good on road courses, and whatever. Martin Truex Jr. that seems to excel on these 1.5-minute intermediate tracks. I think everybody has their favorite tracks that they want to race on, and they have what they're good at and what they're not as good at. And I just think that Kyle has talked against several times racing against these super speedways, and the fact that he's frustrated in how he runs at them. And I think it just really, you see some of these drivers that have that natural ability to go down and do it, and others don't excel at it as well. And I think that's kind of where we find Kyle Busch.
Racing NASCAR, and if you're a team owner, it's kind of like putting together a jigsaw puzzle, if you will. You've got to put the pieces together in the right way. And Roger Penske, I mean, there's not a better owner. I think nobody's going to argue with me about this. There's not a better owner in racing, NASCAR, sports car, IndyCar than Roger Penske. But he kind of just threw everything up in the mix by jumbling up the driver, crew chief lineup after his organization won 6 races and placed all 3 in the top 8 points. But BK Brad Keselowski recently said, hey, we want to be great, and we want to win championships. You've got to recognize that winning races is still a significant accomplishment in this sport. It's a great competition week in and week out. So winning good, but also emphasizes that the greatness is the championship, and we didn't win it. It means we've got work to do. And so Daytona makes the debut of the new combinations, if you will. Keselowski paired with new crew chief Jeremy Bollins. Joey Logano is teamed with crew chief Paul Wolfe, who led Keselowski to a championship in 2012. Ryan Blaney is working with Todd Gordon, who guided Logano to the Cup title in 2018. So a lot of chicken and bacon going on in the Penske camp there.
Yeah, I think Roger and everybody over there is just trying to build the teams up to be competitive with some of their peers out there, and you got to give him all the credit in the world to make those changes and make some of these tough changes that you need. Jeremy Bollins has been around this sport for quite some time. He's worked for the Wood Brothers, and he's worked for other people in this sport. So I think that you have to take a look at what he's been able to accomplish over his career. And for Brad, I'm sure he's frustrated after the end of last year, and probably feels like they should be more competitive than they are. And truthfully, Penske Racing has been, in the last couple of years, the dominant Ford team out there. And I can see the frustration as to, you look at Joe Gibbs Racing and you see them winning, essentially every other week in the series between their four drivers, and Penske is not performing on that level. So you've got Roger and everybody over there, Tim that runs it. Those people are very, very smart. They know how to not only run a business, but try and continue to perform where they need to be performing at. And I think they just took a hard look at last year and look at where other teams are, and I think that's where you see the opportunities arise to start making some moves.
There's a few races a year that we look at and we say it's not when or if, but it's going to happen. The big one's going to happen, and Daytona 500 is one of those. Last year's Daytona 500 saw 36 of 40 cars involved in a crash, so there's going to be a big wreck there at the Daytona 500 because everybody's competitive. There's a few other tracks that we look at, Talladega and Bristol and some other tracks, Martinsville, and we know there's going to be a big one. It's not a matter of when. It's not a matter of if. It's just a matter of when. So let's talk about this. Will the chaos in Daytona, Florida, continue next weekend?
I don't think it ever stopped and ever will. As long as we continue to race at these super speedways, it's going to be an element of the race. And we see so many varying degrees of how people try to run this race, and we see people try to jump to the back of the race during the first half of it or so and watch some of this shake out and try and miss it. But inevitably, as the laps close down, the racing, your friends go away and the racing picks up, and people are have been in that car for 3.5 hours at that point, and concentration levels start to wane, anger starts to pick up, and there's people that are looking for that prize, the Daytona 500, prestigious win, and they're going to do anything that they can to make it happen. And, that's where we see a lot of these incidents come in.
Well, we've only got you here for a few more minutes, and then we got to move on into some other talk. But we're getting our NASCAR conversation with Steve Wilson from Speedway Digest. It's Daytona 500 next weekend, but tomorrow is the Clash, the duels. Talk with us what to look for from that, and who do you look for to when the dust all settles? What are we looking at the end of the day tomorrow?
Well, I'm just, I think a lot of people are happy about two things. First, that Busch is back on it as the brand name for the race, somebody that had been on it for so many years when it first started. And two, they're happy that it's returning right after Daytona 500 qualifying on Sunday afternoon. So we get to see Daytona 500 qualifying, and then we get to back it up with the Busch Clash. These drivers are going to have at least 18 different drivers going to have 2 attempts on the track tomorrow to make something happen. And who comes out at the end of the day, I always hate to try and figure out these super speedways because so many things and calamity happens. At various points, and inevitably somebody that I've picked is unfortunately caught up in one of these calamities. So I try and not pick too much more, but I say that Ford Performance continues to be strong there, and let's say that somebody from Ford Performance and that stable will go to victory lane tomorrow in the Busch Clash. But now that I've said that, the whole field of Fords will probably be caught up in something tomorrow, because traditionally manufacturers in the last couple of years, this is something that Ford themselves started. They like to all run together, and they like to run with their friends, and they don't like to run with other manufacturers until it's, at the end of the race. And like I said, friends go away, and, you're doing everything that you can. So, now that I said that Ford, the Ford cars will probably all be caught up into something tomorrow.
Well, isn't that how it always goes? You got to go with what you think is going to happen, and then go with the opposite of what you think is going to happen. We've been joined by Steve Wilson, our official NASCAR contributor, and I appreciate the time that you've been able to give us, and I know you'll be with us throughout the season as much as you can possibly be with us. But give us a quick outlook of the 2020 season in the next minute or so.
I think these teams, they're going to go out with a bang. This is the last year of the car, so we don't have to worry about rebuilding cars this year. They don't have to worry about bringing the same car back to the racetrack next year. So I think you're going to see drivers and teams pretty much hang this thing completely all the way out into the wind and see what they can do in the final year of the car. And maybe we'll have a few surprises in there. Unfortunately, unless Jimmy Johnson kind of turns this thing around from last year, I think we continue to see Jimmy in the same place. We'll see JGR Racing out there still doing their thing with Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, and all those guys. I'm going to be watching the rookie class, because we have the big three from Xfinity that will be in there this year, with Christopher Bell and Tyler Reddick and Cole Custer that are moving up. So those will be fun drivers that we've watched in the Xfinity Series over the last 2 years or so